We're in chapter 34 of Genesis today, and we're seeing a tragic story in the life of Jacob. Jacob has obeyed God. He's gone back to the place God told him to go to, but the story doesn't end with they lived happily ever after. Matter of fact, many tragedies are yet to befall this family. And the first one has to do with his daughter. Earlier, Leah had a daughter named Dinah. It's unusual in these Old Testament texts to even mention the girls, but Dinah was mentioned for this reason. Because we find in verse 1 that Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. So unwisely, she decides to take a little journey and have a little fun with the other girls that lived in the land. So when she did that without any escort, without any protection, something happened to her that shouldn't have been all that unexpected in a volatile, terroristic world that she lived in. Shechem, verse 2, the son of Namor, the Hittite, the prince of the land, saw her, took her, and lay with her by force. So he rapes the poor girl, but he becomes very attracted to her. After what he did to her, he falls in love. In verse 4, he tells his father, "Get this girl for me as a wife." So he wants to marry her, wants to do, I guess, the right thing. And there's evidence, by the way, that she was never allowed to return home. If you drop down to a little bit later in the story, she is still in the house or the tent or whatever it was of Shechem's when the rest of the story unfolds. So there's a good possibility that she wasn't allowed to go home, and he kept her. He basically kidnapped her. So you can see why there's very bad blood going on between Jacob's clan and this town. By the way, this is a town or a city, whatever it might be, but it's very small probably. We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. These are villages, so to speak. And so what takes place in the rest of the account is something that we should keep. That size of the town should be kept in mind. But anyway, he wants to marry this girl, and so they go up and talk with Jacob and the family about doing so, and they suggest in verse 9 that they intermarry with us and give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourself. Let's form a coalition here. Let's work for one another. We'll take your daughters, you can take ours, and we can intermarry. And and verse 10, thus you shall live with us, and the land will be open before you, and live and trade in it and acquire property. Well, that seems to fit well with the people in both sides, at least at this point. So they make kind of a treaty. They're going to do that. But we find that in verse 13, Jacob's sons answer Shechem and their father Hamor with deceit because they had defiled Dinah, their sister. So they are going to follow the footsteps of Daddy. Jacob's have been a deceiver from one point to the next, all the way through the storyline of which as we followed him. And now they're going to follow up by being deceitful as well. So they come up with a condition. We will make a treaty with you. We will intermarry with you. You can have our daughter, if only on this condition that every male of you, verse 15, be circumcised. Well, that seems to play well with the people of the village because verse 23, will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them. So basically they sold this treaty by saying, look, this is going to be financially good for us. Follow the money. It has a very long history. And so by saying to them, we can make a lot of money off these people. They're wealthy, and we can do one another good. The people bought it. And so every male in this village is now circumcised. And on the third day, verse 25, Simeon and Levi, the two of Dinah's brothers, went up into the village, and while the men are at their sorest point, when they can hardly move, they come up and they kill, verse 25, every male in the village. Now, it's very likely they brought some of the servants with them. It doesn't say that. It's a possibility. But anyway, they kill all the males, and they take verse 26, Dinah home from Shechem's house. And then they looted the city, verse 27. And they took the flocks and the herds and the women and the children to be their own. Well, that is very brutal, very awful thing that they have done. Verse 30, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You brought trouble on me." Now Jacob sees it differently. Yeah, they got the revenge on Shechem and the family there, but now everybody in that area is going to come against Jacob, he thinks. And so he thinks trouble is coming. But the boys justify this in verse 31. Should he treat our sister as a harlot? So they justify their murdering of all these people by saying they should have protected their sister. So you can play that out in your mind any way you want to, but we find a very brutal, deceitful group of men that Jacob apparently is raising at this point in time. So that's where we end that particular chapter, but we find them immediately in chapter 35. They do move from this area, possibly because of the danger that Jacob is talking about. We'll see that tomorrow.